Zelda is back in the conversation again, partly because of the live-action film in development, but also because the story never really leaves us. Every time it resurfaces, people remember why it felt different from other fantasy worlds, deeper in a way that's hard to explain. When The Legend of Zelda first released in 1986, Shigeru Miyamoto wasn't trying to build an epic prophecy or a chosen one narrative. He was trying to capture the feeling of being a child, wandering the forests and caves outside Kyoto. Of fear, wonder, and discovery, the original premise was simple. A young boy exploring a mysterious land and slowly finding his strength. A curiosity leading you into a world that felt ancient before you ever even knew why. And maybe that's why Zelda lands the way it does. Not because it's some grandiose myth by design. It surely does move like one. Every version of Link's awakening begins quietly. A small voice, a soft call, a reminder. You don't wake up with the blade, with the greatest sword of all time. You start with nothing, and then you walk and find a stick on a horizon that feels too big, too vast, and somehow that simplicity feels truer than all the games that hand you power right away. What I want to explore in this video is the symbolic architecture beneath that simplicity. How sleep becomes forgetting, how waking becomes remembering, how the Triforce forms a map of the self, and how Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf are the inner tensions we all move through. I want to show you how the story can quietly show you something you've been living without naming. So if you're here for the lore, this isn't a timeline breakdown. This is about the emotional logic living under the surface. The part of Zelda that feels older than its mechanics and more personal than its quests. And if you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Magus in the Media, where we explore the myth, the magic, and the meaning woven into the stories, shaping the world. Now, there's something I've always appreciated about Link and his long sleep. The story never treats it like a mistake. There's no guilt hanging over him when he wakes, no sense that he's been negligent or weak, just someone reminding him, hey, it's time. It's time to wake up. It's more like a season that's finally ends, a long suspended moment where the world keeps moving and he's held in a kind of stillness, like a waiting. In a lot of older myths, forgetting is a fall from grace. In Zelda, forgetting feels closer to a natural drift, the way a person can move away from themselves without really realizing it. Plato talked about knowledge as something the soul remembers rather than acquires. Zelda takes that idea and makes it emotional. Link is remembering who he is, not through some void, a distance. And the beautiful thing is that the story doesn't rush him. The world holds its breath as he takes his place, as he explores the land and figures out exactly how to cook, pick the apples, find the right clothing, and how to get that master sword. Zelda, she holds her ground in whatever form her burden takes. Even the forces watching over Hyrule seem to trust that he'll return when he's able to hear what's calling him. It's a moment when something inside finally stirs and you finally wake up. Link, it's time to wake up.
Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Wake up, Link.
You see traces of this everywhere in older myths. The sleeping king who returns when the world needs him again. Arthur in Avalon, Frederick beneath Kifhasser. Warriors resting under mountains until the right moment. These stories weren't about laziness, nor neglect. They were about timing, about that sense that a person can be dormant without being gone. Zelda taps into that same current. That current about returning when the world and he himself can finally hold what he's waking into. So when Link wakes up, it's kind of a quiet reunion. He yawns, he gets out of bed, goes outside from his big old tree, goes down the ladder, and he just explores the world. The sleep wasn't wasted time. It was that long road back to the point where Link could finally respond. The moment Link wakes, the story begins with something almost delicate. Again, like I said, Link, wake up. A small voice calling his name, like the ideal, reminding him that we're still there, waiting, tapping gently on the door of your awareness, the way a memory rises before you finally understand why it matters most. That tiny call has always struck me. I've always loved that in the beginning of every Zelda game, where Link finally wakes up. Most games announce the start of a hero's journey with loud noises, something crazy, adventurous. Zelda chooses a whisper. It's the kind of a moment you could almost ignore if you weren't paying attention. And maybe that's the point. Real turning points rarely arrive with ceremony. They show up as a feeling you decide not to miss, that call to adventure you finally decide to accept. When Link steps out of the place that held him, a tree, a house, a shrine, whatever shape that beginning takes, the world doesn't shower him with meaning. It hands him a stick. A basic tool, something that looks like it could snap before you even swing it. And that simplicity lands harder than any legendary weapon ever could. You start small because that's how real change feels inside a human life. It's awkward, it's mundane, it's a little underwhelming. The clothes don't protect much. The tools break if used too hard, or eventually just break because the path unclear. And yet an honesty in that beginning mirrors the way we move after waking from a long season of drifting with whatever we can carry, even if it doesn't really look like it might just not be enough. And part of why Link works so well in this role is hidden right in his name. He's a link, the hinge between the world on the screen and the person holding the controller. The story is built around a hollow space shaped exactly for you to step into. Zelda isn't asking you to impersonate a hero, it's asking you to inhabit one, to feel how your own timing and hesitation and curiosity slip into the moment, slip into his movements. That's why his awakening always feels personal, because it's you opening your eyes, remembering something in yourself. Zelda trusts that that small start matters. You don't begin as someone worthy of the Master Sword. You begin as someone who simply awakes. Once Link steps into the world, the game quietly commits to a kind of honesty most adventure stories skip. Nothing about the early gear feels heroic. Weapons splinter after a few hits, shields crack, clothes barely soften the impact of anything. You walk up a mountain and it's cold and you freeze and you die. And you gotta start all over. Every choice feels a little improvised, like he's borrowing tools that were never meant to last. That fragility, it's the point. Zelda doesn't present growth as some sudden transformation. It asks you to learn through contact. It takes a long time to explore the world, continue the path. Through the feeling of distance, timing, uncertainty, you level up not because the world rewards you, but because you start paying attention to what's going on. You figure out how your body moves after a century of stillness. You learn what breaks, what holds, what needs replacing. Progress happens in tiny little increments, a sturdier weapon, a piece of cloth with a little more resilience, a technique that comes more naturally on the 10th attempt than it did on the first. These small upgrades are symbolic markers of someone returning to themselves piece by piece. The journey doesn't start by proving worthiness. The journey starts by being reliable, and Zelda lets you feel every step of that climb without dressing it up. By the time you reach anything resembling mastery, you've already lived through the part most stories rush past. The slow, awkward rebuilding phases where you're not heroic yet, but you're moving anyway. That's where Link becomes something real. It's real because you are experiencing everything. In the moment he decides to keep going with whatever he has on hand. In Zelda, humility is the foundation that the whole story rests on. Now, when people talk about the Triforce, a very important symbol in all of Zelda, it's everywhere. It's the very backbone of what is going on. They usually focus on the powers it grants or the characters it's tied to, but the image itself, these three simple triangles leaning into each other, feel like one of the most honest pieces of symbolism in the entire series. It's clean, almost childlike, yet it carries a kind of psychological weight that gets clearer the longer you sit with it. And for years, it's a symbol that sat on the back of my own computer. Each piece represents something the human experience leans on. Courage, like Link. Wisdom, like Zelda. Power, like Ganondorf. Now that courage is the steadiness and willingness to step forward when the way isn't fully clear. That wisdom, like Zelda, it's the inward perceptive quality that understands the shape of things before they unfold. Memory, intuition, the capacity to hold complexity without collapsing under it. The anima in symbolic language, that inner feminine that sees what action alone cannot. And again, that power, that Ganondorf. Power becomes dangerous when it loses relationship to the other two. It's force without reflection, desire separated from meaning, yet still a part of the self. That raw will that, when guided, protects and builds, yet when isolated, consumes everything in its path. Most stories treat these as competing ideals, good, wise, strong. Zelda frames them as interdependent. A life led by courage alone burns too fast. Wisdom without movement goes nowhere. Power without guidance twists inward. The Triforce only creates balance when all three are present, each checking and completing the others. Now that's why these characters don't just represent archetypes or elementary ideas. They form a kind of inner map. Link, Zelda, Ganondorf. Three figures locked in endless conflict. Link, Zelda, Ganondorf. Three currents inside a single psyche, and the story keeps trying to bring them back into relationship. When the Triforce is whole, the world steadies. When it fractures, Hyrule reflects that fracture. The landscape becomes an externalization of inner imbalance, echoing that Republic of Plato. Zelda doesn't point out this directly as it lets you play the game as it does. It just lets you feel it as you experience the journey. And once you notice it, the story stops being a fantasy map and starts feeling like a portrait of how a person stays coherent. There's also a reason the Triforce feels instantly familiar, even if you've never studied symbolism. Triads show up wherever people try to map the structures of inner life. Point, line, plane. You see it in Hermetic traditions with force, form, consciousness. You see it in the Kabbalistic tree with the right and the left and the central pillars, the supernals, the Kether, Chokmah, Bina. The Trinity itself presents this pattern of relational unity, three aspects that only reveal their meaning together. The human mind keeps returning to these ideas that balance requires more than one axis. The Triforce lands in that same space, distance, interdependent, and always pointing back to a deeper coherence. Another parallel shows up in the body, soul, spirit triad that threads through both ancient philosophy and later religious thought. Body as action, soul as understanding, and spirit as will or intention. Link, Zelda, Ganondorf echo that structure almost unconsciously. Link carries the body, the mover, the doer. Zelda holds the soul, the memory, the intuition, the insight. Ganondorf represents spirit pushed out of balance, the will turned inward on itself. And when these three fall out of relationship, the world fractures. When they move towards harmony, the story steadies. And when you're making these comparisons between these three characters and these three things, it's not an exact science, but there's some form of reflection, some form of contemplation that we can find within these three. The power of the Triforce isn't that each piece stands alone, it's that they're interconnected. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Father, Mother, Son, or Daughter, forever echoing in the mythologies of time. Courage loses direction without wisdom. Wisdom collapses into stillness without courage. Power becomes hunger without both. The symbol is not trying to lecture you. It's trying to let you feel it as the structure holding Hyrule together. Now, Zelda is one of those characters that people think they understand at a glance. Royal bloodline, sacred duty, the destiny to seal or guide or protect. But when you look at how the story treats her, she feels more like a part of Link that he hasn't fully reached yet. And sometimes she feels like the hero herself. In symbolic language, she sits in the anima position. Not so much the princess needing to be rescued. She's a badass in and of herself. But the inner feminine that carries meaning and memory, the part of the psyche that senses the truth long before the conscious self, is able to act on it. She sees the shape of the crisis while Link is still asleep. She holds the tension the world is buckling under. She stays present in ways that aren't visible, but undeniably stabilizing. And she waits, and she waits, and she waits, and she trusts. Zelda's waiting is the patience of someone who knows transformation doesn't respond to force. She doesn't push Link awake. She doesn't pull him through the story. She stands at the edge of the world like a signal he'll eventually learn to interpret, like the light guiding the hero further, the hero on his journey. When Link moves towards her, it never feels like saving the princess in the old trope sense. It feels more like closing the distance between the conscious mind and the part of the self that carries depth. Reaching Zelda is reaching inward to the point where intuition and action finally meet. And when that connection is made, the story shifts. Hyrule steadies, the air changes, the world seems to widen again. She's the reason the journey has shape. She is the name of the game. Zelda embodies the meaning that Link has been moving towards since the moment he woke up, the memory of himself that was waiting on the far side of sleep. There's also a priestess quality to her role, the keeper of continuity, remembering what the rest of Hyrule has forgotten, holding the flame while Link sleeps. And in some traditions, this is the Sophia character, the one who carries wisdom through rupture. Zelda is defined by the way she keeps meaning alive in the long spaces where action is impossible. Then there's the hint of that old wisdom keeper, the figure who holds meaning while everything else fractures. And again, in some traditions, in those old Gnostic traditions, Sophia. In others, she's the one who remembers what the world forgets and what we have forgotten. Zelda carries that same quiet weight as a steady point the rest of the story turns towards. She keeps the flame lit while Link is away, and that continuity becomes part of what he is waking back into. Now, it's very easy to put Ganondorf into that villain role, but that seems to miss the most interesting part of what he represents. In the symbolic language of Zelda, he is what happens when one part of the psyche breaks from the others and tries to become the whole story. His dominion is power, raw will, unfiltered desire, the instinct to impose rather than relate. There's nothing inherently corrupt about that force. In a balanced life, will is what anchors action. It protects, it builds, it gives shape to intent. But when power loses contact with wisdom and with courage, it twists inwardly. It becomes hunger that cannot be satisfied. Ganondorf embodies this drift, his desires of disconnected meaning, strength emptied of context. He's not so much villainous or monstrous by nature. Everything he touches has to answer to his will, though. And anything that doesn't is treated as resistance, which is why Link's conflict with him feels more like a symbolic confrontation than a simple fighting of the bad guy. Link is facing parts of the self that tries to take over when fear or pride or past wounds cut the psyche into pieces. Zelda stands as that insight that sees the whole picture. Link stands as the courage that steps towards it, and Ganondorf stands as the force that refuses the relationship. When these three fall out of balance, Hyrule becomes a landscape shaped by imbalance, fields emptied, skies dimmed, time is distorted, creatures abound to be battled. The world reflects that psychological divide, so the final confrontation is about restoring proportion and balance, harmony. It's the moment where will is returned to its place as one element of a larger self. In defeating Ganondorf, Link isn't erasing strength, he's returning it to its proper alignment. The story never says this outright, but the feeling is unmistakable. When Ganondorf falls, the world breathes again. And maybe it has said that in one of the cutscenes, but you kind of get what I'm saying, right? Now, by the time Link reaches the Master Sword, something in the story has already shifted. You've spent hours carrying makeshift tools, swords, watching them snap in your hand, break, picking up new ones, slowly piecing yourself back together. And so when that sword finally appears, you feel like you finally become who you wanted to be. The Master Sword sits in the same symbolic lineage as Excalibur. Yes, it is legendary, yet also because it responds to the state of the person who is approaching it. Not by brute force, willing to claim it that way. You're not going to be able to trick your way into it. You can't fake being ready to be the hero of time. The sword waits for alignment, for the moment when you wake and courage steps in, where wisdom is there, and that power is waiting to find balance. In most versions of the myth, Arthur pulls Excalibur because his inner life matches the blade's demand. Zelda follows a very similar tradition. The Master Sword doesn't choose a champion. It acknowledges coherence. It may say that Link is the champion of time, and at the same time, Link is ready, which is why maybe he woke up. The world seems to look at Link and say, you're steady enough now, you're present enough, you can hold this without breaking yourself on it. What makes the moment powerful is the contrast. You begin with a stick unable to take more than a few hits. You spend the early games learning how fragile everything is. The Master Sword is the point where that fragility begins to make sense. It shows that the journey was about refining intention and your virtues. The sword is just simply there, offering a truth you've grown into. That mastery is the point where action, understanding, and will finally move in the same direction. And in Zelda, the Master Sword isn't what makes you a hero. What makes you a hero is someone who can hold their own power without losing themselves in it. Now, when people talk about Link waking up, they usually mean the moment the gameplay begins. But symbolically, waking has been building long before he opens his eyes. Zelda treats awakening as a return to the self. That's why the long sleep never carries any shame, it feels like. Not a moral punishment or being scolded, even though it slightly feels like when they're asking you to wake up when she says, Link, wake up. Maybe she's scolding you, but maybe not. The story holds a kind of compassion for you, though, for the timing of human life. You wake when you can, you step forward when the sound calling you finally cuts through whatever distance you've lived inside. In Platonic terms, this is anamnesis, remembering what the soul already knows. In more esoteric language, it's the moment when consciousness reorients itself towards its own depths. Zelda frames this not as enlightenment, but as a quiet click inside the psyche, the shift from disassociation to participation. Everything Link gathers along the way, his tools, the first movements of learning how to walk with him, the slow build into the mastery, and reinforces the truth that remembering is a process. There's no flash of insight, not just some mystical awakening. It's a gradual re-entry into a world that's been waiting for you. Even the reunion with Zelda reflects this. The moment when the inner and the outer halves of meaning finally rejoin, when the animus and the anima unite, when intuition and action are not separate directions, but when the part of the self that held memory at a distance becomes close again. By the time you reach the end of the journey, awakening no longer sounds like a dramatic event. It feels like the natural conclusion to a long season of forgetting, a gentle return to presence. Zelda never says any of this out loud. Yes, I'm extrapolating, interpreting, digging into. Zelda just lets you sense it in the pacing, the landscape, and the way Link hesitates before each new step. The game trusts that you'll recognize the feeling because remembering is something everyone does at some point, slowly, unevenly, and almost always later than they thought they should have. Yet in this myth, there's no penalty for late timing. Just pick up the game and continue. Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, all universes, all separate, yet all with these same characters. There's just the moment you finally open your eyes and know it's time. And maybe that's the quiet truth the Zelda myth keeps circling, that life often moves in these long arcs of forgetting, returning, forgetting and returning, moving through cycle after cycle. You drift, you sleep, you lose the thread, and then something, a voice, a memory, a moment of clarity calls you back. And there's levels also more of Plato where you get his transmigration. The many different games, the soul moving through each one of them. Not one story throughout each game, but many stories, many lands, many different Hyrules, many Zeldas and Links. A game that recognizes the person you've been carrying this whole time. Zelda just gives that inner rhythm a landscape, a face, and a sword waiting in the center of it. What makes Zelda endure is the emotional shape of the journey. Yes, there's nostalgia. The scaling of the worlds are vast and many. The game understands something most stories rush past, that growth rarely starts with certainty, and awakening almost never feels heroic. You begin with a whisper calling your name, grabbing a stick in your hand, and a horizon that looks way too vast and wide for you. And somehow those small beginnings carry more truth than any dramatic prophecy. Zelda gives you a space to feel the awkwardness of returning to yourself, the fragility and the patience, and that slow strengthening over time. And the characters at the center of the myth are a part of a life trying to come back into balance. Triforce is a reminder that no single aspect of the self can carry that weight alone. And by the time Link draws the Master Sword, you've lived through that quiet work that makes him worthy of it. Worthy because he finally is becoming coherent, because he's present, because the long sleep finally ends in recognition. And that's the heart of Zelda. Zelda's not there to make you feel guilty about sleeping, and whenever it is that you choose to awaken to that call of the adventure. And that's the heart of Zelda, the remembering. A myth about what it feels like to finally wake up after years of drifting and realize that the world was waiting with trust. This story stays with us because most of us know what it feels like to fall asleep to our own lives. And most of us know the strange, unsteady relief of waking. Zelda shows us how awakening happens in small steps, and we're building this channel the same way. One story, one insight, and one moment of recognition at a time. And if you want to be part of that, like, subscribe, and share it with somebody who would appreciate the symbolism, the love for storytelling, so you can be there ready for the next deep dive. Thank you for watching. This is Magus in the Media.